What's up, everybody? Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. We hope you're doing good. We hope you're not frozen to death, because as often as me and Mike complain about the weather, some weird shit happened and half the country froze.
Yeah, for once it wasn't just me. I love it. I talked to everyone, you and everyone in the Discord, and I feel like I'm the only one that's suffering here, but not anymore.
Nope, it's tons of people with exploding trees and ice quakes. Have you heard of those?
That's crazy.
Yeah, those sound scary.
Yeah, how cold it got was insane. And then the fact that we got a huge snowstorm while it was that fucking cold. I mean, I don't know if the whole country got the snowstorm when we got the snowstorm last week, but we ended up getting 2 feet of snow in less than 48 hours. I think it was like 30 hours we had 2 feet of snow. And it's been an insane winter up here, as it was. Like we passed the record for snowfall in the year, like in December. And it keeps coming. I woke up this morning and I had like 2 inches of snow on my car.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's never ending. This winter has been the most shit winter of all time, and I'm so fucking sick of it. If I could elbow drop the winter, I absolutely would.
Well, we'll turn your mood right around. We're going to talk about something really interesting tonight. You sent me your notes on it, and I got to watch a couple other things, and it's one, I'm surprised I haven't come across this, and two, it's one of the most evidence-laden, unbelievable cases we've come across.
It's I don't know. In my mind, like there's probably something, a completely rational answer, but in my mind, I go straight to like fucking Lovecraftian horrors, and that's what we're dealing with here. But I'm going to be telling the tale of one Dr. Jacabo Grinberg Zilberbaum. I'm sorry. And this guy, he was a Mexican neurophysiologist, a psychologist, and a researcher. He became well known for his unconventional but still scientific investigations, where he was looking into the nature of consciousness and the human mind. And over the course of his career, he had published over 50 books on topics ranging from brain function and meditation to shamanism. He even touched on telepathy and altered states of consciousness. And what he was trying to do throughout the course of his career, he was trying to bridge scientific methods with mystical experiences and indigenous practices. And because he was trying to kind of bridge them all together, a lot of his peers kind of looked at his studies as being controversial, like a pseudoscience. But he was he wasn't just like some quack who just rolled up and got his degree from Phoenix University or something. He kind of has, his backstory is kind of similar to Victor Frankenstein's. He began to develop an interest in the human mind when his mother died from a brain tumor when he was 12 years old. So he started becoming obsessed with the brain. And much like Victor Frankenstein, his mother's death kind of pushed his research further. He ended up earning his PhD in physiopsychology. His doctoral research, he was examining how geometric stimuli affected human brain activity. So that's what his thesis was on. And he got his degree in the United States and then moved back to Mexico. And once he moved back to Mexico, he founded the psychophysiology laboratories at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. So, you know, kind of a big deal. He's not just some schlub.
Yeah, sounds like he knows his shit and was successful at it too.
Yeah. And in the 80s, he established the National Institute for the Study of Consciousness, which was at that point supported by the National Autonomous University, as well as Mexico's Science Council. So the government of Mexico, their Science Council, supported this. initiative. But he had a interesting model for what he thought of as conscious reality. He had developed this theoretical framework that was called the syntergic theory, and it was an amalgamation of the words synthesis and energy. And he used this theory to explain how human consciousness interacts with our reality. And based on this theory, or I should say the basics of this theory, is that there is a continuous field of energy, or you can think of it as information, that underlies all of reality. So, like, I guess to make it easy, the ones and zeros in the Matrix, like that sort of thing, but not exactly. You know, it's not a computer program, but it's that sort of thing. There's this information that's imprinted on the framework of reality. But as humans, we only perceive just this tiny little piece of this continuous field of energy. And the part that we perceive is shaped by our awareness and our brain functions. So conscious experience is arising from our interaction with the world around us. So basically what he's arguing is that reality isn't fixed, but it's instead created by perception, which for anybody who is into occultism or using magic, whether it be ceremonial or whatever your method is, but the reason that magic works is because the magic user is shaping reality to their needs or to their will. So you're using energy to manipulate reality towards your goal. So here he's saying that he's basically supporting the idea that this idea in magic is real. If our perception is what shapes reality, but it also explains why people that experience the same thing have different memories of that event, or why you can put two people, like remember the dress meme? Is it what, pink and blue or white and gold? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But you remember the dress?
Yes, sir.
And some people were like, it's this, and other people were like, it's that. But to the observer, the way that they saw it was the way that it was. So that was shaping their reality.
Right.
So he was using this concept to kind of put him on the frontier of neuroscience. And he was trying to combine neuroscience, psychology, as well as philosophy. And this led him to start to design experiments that attempted to quantify non-local correlations between the brain and between the observers. So one of the experiments that he did for brain-to-brain correlation, where he was experimenting with non-locality, what he did was ran experiments where he would set up two people that were placed in separate, isolated rooms. They were completely shielded from any sensory input. One person, who in the test would be dubbed the stimulated subject, was exposed to visual stimuli. Usually he would flash lights and show geometric patterns. On the other participant, who was dubbed the non-stimulated subject, they were sitting quietly, completely blocked out from any of the sensory input the other volunteer was getting. And they had EEG, which is an electroencephalogram. They had the electrodes attached to their head. And he was looking to see whether there were changes in one of the subject's brain that would appear simultaneously in the other subject's brain without any sort of sensory communication. So basically he's showing the one person flashing lights and geometric patterns, and he wanted to see if somehow there was a link between the two subjects and if the other one would register. So he reported that in some trials, he was able to correlate EEG patterns between both subjects. Based on his report, he's saying that the correlations appeared to be time-locked to the stimulus given to the stimulated subject. And so he viewed this as being evidence that non-local interaction between brains may actually exist. His findings were controversial, though, in this experiment especially. The correlations that he was detecting were very fragile, and they wouldn't even really be deemed to be statistically noteworthy from a regular standpoint. There was an independent lab that actually tried to replicate his results doing the exact same method, and their report was inconsistent. So they didn't have the same, it would have been, sometimes there would have been a correlation, other times there weren't, but it wasn't enough to make it statistically noteworthy. So a lot of the critics on this say that it could just be coincidence or even experimental bias on Grinberg's part. But he was still at the forefront, even though this was still controversial. Mainstream neuroscience wasn't even asking any of these questions, let alone setting up experiments to test whether or not the possibility was there. So he was working to just get a better understanding of the mind and just kind of seeing what the mind could do, rather than, I don't think he was out there being like, we're all psychic and I'm going to measure psychic activity. It was more, he was trying to test what the human brain and human mind is capable of.
Right.
So that was just one of his experiments, but he also tried to, he did experiments where he was trying to prove the synergic field, and basically what he was doing was he was trying to support the theory, and he was trying to see if our perception, or the observer, the subject, whatever you want to call him, the person in the experiment, he was trying to see if their perception wasn't actually recording reality. So like when we're sitting here observing things, we're recording reality as it happens. In this experiment, he wanted to see if perception constructed reality. So he was looking at the idea that reality comes from what he called an underlying informational field. So again, the ones and zeros, and whether this field could be shaped by neural activity in the human brain. So his subjects were exposed to structured visual patterns like grids and geometric forms. Again, they had the EEG on, and he was collecting the data to see how their brain would synchronize with these patterns. And he examined how attention, inattention, and expectation for what they were viewing altered their perception. So based on this, he came to the conclusion that the human brain appears to organize reality, not passively receive it. So again, this explains the people that experience the same exact thing at the same exact time and have completely different memories of it, because your brain is organizing what you're taking in different ways. So it's going to play back differently for other people. But he also concluded that conscious attention can increase the neural coherence, which in his theory, that meant that there was a greater interaction between the subject's brain and the synergic field. And this, he was at the forefront, but this kind of starts to overlap with modern cognitive neuroscience, and what some of the experiments that are going on in the field currently. But he tried to take it further and wanted to see how meditation and altered states could alter this effect, and see if maybe people that were in a meditative state or in a different mental state of some sort, how their mental state would reflect in reality or shape reality. So he began to study meditators and go visit shamans and mystics, and was comparing their ecstatic states or their meditative states to his control subjects. And what he would do, he would hook them up to an EEG, and he was looking for frequency changes in the brain, and also looking for hemispheric coherence in the brain, and also wanted to see if they control the stability of the neural rhythms in their brain. And what he found out was that advanced practitioners, whether they be meditators or ecstatics or mystics or anyone that goes into an altered state, they showed highly coherent brain states, reduced internal noise, meaning that they're able to kind of clear everything out of their brain, and greater synchronization across their brain regions, across the entire brain. So like not just one area is lighting up because they're thinking about snacks and how they have to take a dump. Like their entire brain is kind of at the same level. So he started to argue that these altered states could allow the human mind to expand its perception and access what he called non-ordinary realities. And being in this state would allow the practitioner direct interaction with the synturgic field. So it's some of this stuff is like it aligns what the things that he's trying to prove scientifically kind of starts to align with like the idea of astral projection, for instance, or lucid dreaming, how you're using altered states of consciousness or meditation to leave your body or have visions. Like I believe many years ago we had a guy on named Kev. He had been on a few times. Shout out to Kev. If I don't, it's been years since I've talked to him, but love that dude. Amazing guy. But he turned me on to shamanic drumming, which I don't know if I've ever really talked about it much on the show, but I was having a hard time getting into a meditative state, and so he suggested that. And there was one specifically that he gave me. I think it was like 20 minutes long, and it was basically like a 19-minute meditation, and then the drum beat would change at 19 minutes to bring you back for a minute, and then at 20 minutes it would end. But it helps to kind of clear your mind because it's just a steady rhythmic beat. There's no change. It's just a constant rhythmic beat. And some people use like binaural beats to get into a meditative state, because for some people just sitting there in silence, it's hard. Like then the silence takes on a sound of its own, and sometimes that's too much. So some white noise, or just something, you want something that's going to be repetitive and unchanging, because any subtle changes will trigger your brain like, oh, that's different, which is why the beat changes when it's bringing you back, because that's the way to trigger your return. But I find that stuff so interesting because it shows like the actual science behind why your brain is getting in that state, and then arguing that potentially in that state you're more in control of your reality, which is fucking wild.
Yeah,
because you're meditating to let go, and you're more in control of your reality in that moment.
Yeah, I remember talking to Kev and him helping me with both the shamanic drumming and the binaural beats to help dreams and help being able to not have nightmares, and it was very, very effective.
Yeah, we remember Martin Adelsmith.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's a musician as well, and I think we've only had him on to talk about weird shit, but he writes books, and he's an author, or he writes books and he's a musician. He's put out several albums, but he created this one, I think it was an hour long binaural meditation, and it was wild, man. I really liked it. It was very different from like the regular shamanic drumming, but I really liked it. And there were different levels to it. So in this, there were changes, but it was like to bring you into different levels. It was using different binaural beats as you were going along.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cool. I wish I still had it. It was on an old computer, and I don't even know what it's probably in my attic somewhere. But yeah, I never transferred the file over after I got a new computer. But I had that back in the day when iPods were still a thing. The kids these days, what's an iPod? Which is fucking wild.
Yeah.
You mean an iPhone? No, we had these things called iPods in the days before mobile internet.
And it just played music.
Yeah, that was it. If you had a big enough one, you could download some movies, but that was about it. Do you know much about the shamanic healers from Mexico and South America?
A little bit. Curanderos is what I'm familiar with. Or
ayahuasqueros.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a show in and of itself. Sometime that I'm actually reading this awesome book right now called Singing to the Plants, and it's all about mestizo shamanism in Upper Peru, and it's so cool. Like, it's just talking about the different practices and then the initiation for new healers, and how being a shaman or a healer sets you up to magical attack from rivals or sorcerers that are angry because you're healing their victims, and like all this crazy shit. It's like, it's absolutely Wizard Wars. Like the guy who wrote it had 2 teachers, and one of his teachers was killed through sorcery, allegedly.
Whoa.
Yeah. But apparently like they'll send magic darts and cast curses and shit. It's wild. But Dr. Grinberg wanted to study shamans and observe their practices and their rituals. And he did this outside of the laboratory. Like, he actually went to these people and studied what they did. So he went out in the field and started observing Mexican shamans and traditional folk healing. And along the way, he had encounters with a bunch of different shamans, but one in particular was a healer who's kind of notable. She goes by the name Pachita. In his studies, he was examining how shamanic practices in altered states might be understood within the synergic model of consciousness that he was forming. So one of the people, like I mentioned, was a healer named Pachita, who Pachita was the nickname of a woman named Barbara Guerrero. And she was a healer who was active mainly in Mexico City from the 40s through the late 70s. And she became famous for what became known as psychic or astral surgeries. And these operations would be carried out on the patients without anesthesia, no sterilization, and most of the time there wouldn't even be a visible incision on the body, but the surgery would still result in healing in the patient. So she, throughout her entire career, she remained in extreme poverty, and she would just operate out of a small shack. And despite the fact that she lived in just this tiny slut shack in a poor area of Mexico City, she got patients coming to see her from all classes. So rich people, poor people, it didn't matter. They knew she could heal, and they would come to see her. So she has, there were hundreds of people that she's done these surgeries on, and a lot of them reported back about what would happen. And when she was performing the surgeries, she would enter into a trance state, And when she went into the trance state, she claimed to be possessed by the spirit of an ancient Aztec ruler. And then she would use sometimes a rusty knife, sometimes she would use her bare hands, and she would remove diseased organs, whether it be hearts, lungs, tumors from people, kidneys, whatever. She would extract these diseased organs, and according to witnesses, these diseased organs would physically appear, and she would put them sometimes in metal bowls so that the others could see it. And then once she finished, the patient's body would appear intact, and there would be no scars and very little, sometimes no blood at all.
You've seen those, right? Those clips on Unsolved Mysteries and all those shows where they were performing those surgeries?
Yeah. There's in the book I'm reading, there is a part where they're talking about how shamanism has a lot of sleight of hand and trickery, and some of the shamans won't acknowledge it, others will, but the ones that do say that it's part of the performance to make the healing real, that the performance is necessary to create real healing, and the results are there.
Wow.
Which is weird. Yeah. But he was talking about how one shaman would stuff a little tuft of down feathers under his tongue, and then when he would go into a trance, he would bite the inside of his mouth and bleed on this tuft of feathers, and then he would spit this bloody thing out, and this would be the disease that he'd pulled from the patient. So there's a lot of trickery and deceit there, but again, if it's a result, the results that are what you're after. So if the pageantry is part of it, then what are you going to do? The results speak for themselves, I guess. But apparently she was treating patients that were deemed untreatable or even terminal in some cases, and they reported rapid recovery after her psychic surgeries.
Wow.
So when Dr. Grinberg went to her, he was approaching her differently from others that approached her. So usually the people that come to her are either journalists that want, the story about her, or they're people that believe in her abilities and are coming to her for help. He approached her as a fellow scientist. And so he actually he would stand there and witness her surgery. He would interview the patients and other witnesses that observed the surgeries. He, in great detail, documented all the cases he observed. And he was attempting to understand how this could be possible using what he knew of neuroscience and his theory of consciousness. And he said in his observations, he was not able to debunk her abilities at all. But he also admitted that he couldn't explain her abilities. So to him, she became like the cornerstone of his synturgic theory. And she was basically proof that reality is not fixed, but it comes from this informational field that human consciousness can reorganize. So basically, in his view, she wasn't breaking the laws of physics or doing anything outside of the realm of possibility. She was operating at a deeper level of reality and reorganizing matter itself through her consciousness. So what she was able to pull out was this diseased organ, but she was able to reorganize to create a healthy organ behind it. So what he did while he was there, he observed her rituals, he recorded it, observed her trance states, wrote down everything about that. He took detailed notes about the interviews, recorded the interviews, and then he started using his EEG machine on all the shamans to see if their states matched the states of meditators that he had observed in the laboratory. With Pachita specifically, he said that he could not explain the surgeries with any way that he knew. And according to him, he ruled out sleight of hand, but this was by his own judgment. So if she was really good, she could have pulled one over on him. But in the people, the patients, he was able to document not only physical but psychological effects that her surgeries had on them. But he was hesitant to use this. He found this more like a case of interest. Like I said, it was the cornerstone of his theory. But rather than claiming that all this was proof, he kind of framed the events as anomalies that current science could not account for. But he was hopeful that someday science would be able to understand it. So he was very open-minded, but I feel like his approach, he maintained a scientific approach. And he may have had his own personal biases, wanting to prove his theory, but based on everything we talk about, like it seems like there's something to that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the stuff with these types of surgeries and the healing, the holistic healing and surgeries like that.
Mm-hmm.
Every show we watched as a kid covered it, and there's always been, when it comes to Americans talking about it, a strong sense of debunking it. But I think there's something to be said for it. Every culture has their way of practicing medicine, and I understand that the curanderos, it's a part of it is spiritualism. They don't just heal the body, they can heal the spirit or those types of problems as well.
Yeah, it does make me, because I think that the human mind is a lot more powerful than we think, and we can see that when they've done studies with placebos and find that even when they tell the person it's a placebo, it still works because the human mind accepts it for what it is as medicine. Even though we're being told it's a placebo, we're still like, well, but the doctor's giving us the medicine, and it still works. And is it? And we know it's not. It's a sugar tablet, but it still works because the brain makes it work. So it's certain people can tap into different levels of consciousness. And I think, meditative state is one level, but you can get deeper than that. And that's where like the astral projection comes in, where you're able to access non-physical reality outside of your body. And whether you believe that or not, there's a lot of interesting stories involving it. And I think that a lot of the times that also explains near-death experiences as well. Because it's you're not actually dead, and so you're shaping reality. It's just non-physical reality at that point.
Right.
But you can also heal, and again, to go back to magical practices and using will and intention to change someone's mental state in some way. Whether it be to make someone look at you more favorably, or have your boss be nicer to you, or cursing someone, or even helping someone heal. There's plenty of green and white magic that are specifically for healing, whether it be healing heartache, healing physical wounds, healing sickness, healing animals, plants, what have you. It's using will and intention to heal. So you're basically using your brain to create this energy and manipulate reality. And Grinberg also studied whether intention could affect biological systems. That was one of the other experiments he worked on. And one of his experiments, he would have a person that would attempt to influence another's physiological state. And he was trying to measure how stress or being relaxed would alter that. And he had everyone strapped up with the EEGs so he could read their brains while it was happening. And in his tests, he found that intention on the part of the subjects appeared to produce a small but measurable effect on some of the trials. he noticed that the effects increased when the subjects had existing emotional or relational bonds. So if they had, if they were family or in a relationship or friends, or if they had some connection, he noticed that the effects were stronger. But again, he didn't feel that this conclusively demonstrated his theory. He just thought it was kind of like a clue leading towards it. But because the results weren't 100% concrete, it could be looked at as just being circumstantial. So he was trying to conduct other experiments to identify brain activity correlations that would be suggestive of non-local interactions. So kind of like a reverse remote viewing sort of thing, where he was looking to see if stimuli outside of what the subject can observe would potentially affect their mental state. But that's kind of getting into the government stuff with mind control and remote viewing and all that. But it could potentially tie in with this story. But he conducted these experiments through the 80s and into the mid 90s. And one of the things that he said that kind of it more tickles my fancy than anything, but one of the things he said was that if someone was able to unlock the key to the syntergic field, that they could potentially just disappear. And whether that means like use that to turn invisible, or whether he means getting absorbed into the field itself and becoming pure energy, I don't know. But with that in mind, he was reported missing in December of 1994. So he had last been seen on December 8th in 1994 in Mexico City while working at his organization. He had a scheduled birthday celebration for his 48th birthday on December 12th in 1994, but he never showed up. And initially, his family didn't seem alarmed by it because sometimes he would just randomly decide to go on a trip or just go off the grid and get involved in his work or go visit with a shaman or something without telling anybody. But as time went on, no one was able to reach him or his wife, Teresa Lopez. Then Teresa Lopez did contact the family after his initial disappearance. So Teresa didn't show up to the party, but after his initial disappearance, she had called his friends and family and said that he was traveling or that he went on a retreat. But that was never able to be verified. So eventually his family, I say eventually, but a day or so after his missed birthday party and the fact that they couldn't get a hold of him after the birthday party, they decided to report his disappearance and also contacted a private investigator. So the police looked into it, private investigators have looked into it, and no trace of him was ever found. There was never any biological remains found. There were no personal sightings or personal belongings. There were no sightings of him ever. And his disappearance was officially said to be unsolved. Authorities looked into it. They never found any evidence of foul play at all. And eventually the case kind of faded from the headlines in Mexico. And that was until the 2020s. In the early 2020s, there was a documentary that came out. It was in Spanish called El Secreto del Dr. Grinberg.
Very good.
I apologize for my awful accent. But interesting to the story is that after those phone calls, his wife, Teresa Lopez, was also never found. And her fate also remains a mystery. She did, so some of Grinberg's family said she was acting in kind of weird The fact that she called them and told them that he was traveling or on a retreat, but they couldn't verify that. And apparently she was also seen removing items from their house after he vanished. But within weeks after his disappearance, she completely disappeared. And authorities and family members looked for her, but they were never able to locate her. There is a report from 1995 where Teresa may have reached out to her mother, who lived in Baja California, but her mother denies that ever happened. So is her mother protecting her, or did it never happen? Just a rumor, just hearsay. But after that, there's no information that exists on anything that happened to her.
Now, the lady that he started to study with, the shaman, what was her name?
Yeah, Pachita.
Now, I read in an article that sometimes she would get in trouble with the police. Some people would consider her a charlatan and call her a charlatan, and she would pretty much get run out of town, and she would disappear. She would literally disappear for years at a time, always to return, and they always would talk about how she never aged a day.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Did he learn something from her, perhaps? Maybe she helped him unlock the key. Like I said, she was the cornerstone of his studies for a while.
Yeah.
So that maybe. I mean, that's one of my theories. So there's a few theories on what could have happened to him. And I'm going to save that one because that's the most fun. And the other ones are just kind of bleh. Who cares? One of the theories surrounding his disappearance is that he just got sick of living in modern society and decided to disappear and retreat into spiritual practice and basically become like a wild man in the woods.
Right. I mean, well, if we're going to go in that direction, I think he could have just that could have been the next path in his studies. And that's where we don't even have to go the wild man route. Yeah,
absolutely. It could have been the next step.
Yeah. I'm living with these folks now. That's it. This is where it's at.
Yeah. And then if you went completely off the grid and then say something happened to him in the jungle and he's living with some tribe somewhere, they probably would have disposed of his body in the same way they would dispose of their own tribe, and no one would ever know because they didn't know he was there.
Yeah.
There's the idea that it may have been a homicide, and it could have been either maybe potentially his wife, or it could have been maybe a rival, or even government related because he was digging too deep. Mm-hmm. Along that line, there's theories that it could have been the CIA or the FBI because he was some of his studies could have been linked to some of the programs that they were doing, like Stargate. For people that don't know what Stargate is, it was a highly classified government program from the U.S. government, I should specify. U.S. government program that ran for about 20 years, and it explored basically whether or not psychic abilities could be harnessed for intelligent work. Specifically, it ran mostly through the Cold War, so it was kind of to spy on Russia and their allies. But the program centered on remote viewing. It was the code name, so people hear Stargate and instantly they think of the Kurt Russell movie or the TV series. But this was actually a code name that was used by the government in 1991. And it was kind of a way to bring together all these psychic research programs that the government was running since the 70s. And these programs were run under the supervision of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and then later they were overseen by the CIA after the CIA kind of absorbed the DIA. But the origin of it was centered on concerns that the Soviet Union were conducting what they dubbed psychotronic research. So they wanted to look in to see what they were studying and whether or not psychic phenomena could be used for intelligence efforts. They, like all great government projects, they had a bunch of names that they changed and then consolidated programs and then changed and consolidated programs. So, but some of these are great. They had names. One of the names was Gondola Wish. There was Grill Flame, Center Lane, Sunstreak, and then finally they just took them all and like, fuck it, this is all Stargate.
I want that job. I want to be the dude that sits in the office every day and just like
Name
this project, sir. Oh, you got it.
This is Operation Bowling Shoe.
This is Operation Thunderball.
Yep. Barbecue Biscuit. Everyone there just gets hungry.
Cheese Horizon.
They're all fun names. Harry Manbreast. But this program's overall mission was to determine whether or not individuals could use psychic powers to see distant or hidden places or people, and whether or not that these visions were had any real intelligence value. So the program was run. It wasn't just a lab. It was treated like a tool for intelligence finding. A lot of the times remote viewers were soldiers, but sometimes they were civilians, and they would also bring in people that claimed to be psychics, to see whether they could find classified locations, military facilities, or other things like that. And all of the sessions were run under controlled conditions with monitors guiding viewers, and they basically wrapped everything up, made sure no information got out. But they had mixed results, and after 1995, the CIA commissioned an independent evaluation of the program and concluded that there were some remote viewing results that exceeded what would be expected by common chance. The information that was produced from these results were too vague or unreliable to be useful. So there was no documented cases where remote viewing directly and reliably produced intelligence, and so as a result, they shut the program down.
Mm-hmm.
But despite the fact that it shut down, there's people that claim that there were successes and that a lot of these successes were ignored. There was a lot of high accuracy in operational tasks. And maybe like government programs, they just changed the name again and kept it classified.
Yeah, definitely.
So one of the possibilities here is that maybe he was pulled in by the government and forced to work secretly for one of these programs. Maybe he's in one of those underground bunkers somewhere. Maybe he's working with fucking aliens.
Yeah, right. Forcefully hired.
Yeah. Or maybe his work was exposing too much and he was taken out. My favorite theory, though, is the H.P. Lovecraft theory, the Randolph Carter theory. So for anyone who's not familiar with H.P. Lovecraft, he was a horror writer from the early 1900s. Super racist dude, but he kind of got over it later in life. But he created Cthulhu and the Cthulhu mythos and a lot of fucking crazy ideas about non-physical reality and reality outside of human perception and things of that nature. But he had a reoccurring character in his stories named Randolph Carter. And this character was studying the strangeness of the world. And there's one story called The Gates of the Silver Key. And in this book, Carter travels beyond space, time, humanity, and even identity itself. And once he gets beyond all that, he encounters the being Yog-Sothoth, who in Lovecraft's mythology is a cosmic entity that embodies all time and all space. It's both the gate and the key to the gate. But while Carter's going through this traveling, he learns that identity is fluid in that he's only one expression of a much larger cosmic self, and that self is an illusion and the universe is largely vastly indifferent to the individual. And the story kind of talks about what happens when the human mind reaches too far but then keeps going anyway. But that's kind of like the idea in some religious belief, like Gnostic Christianity, for instance, and Hinduism, that we're all emanations from the divine source, and every living thing is a ripple from that divine source. So that kind of goes along with the idea of Randolph Carter finding out that he's only one expression of a much larger cosmic self. And I think that kind of philosophy has a lot to offer real life. Like stop being so self-important. Think of yourself, even if you don't believe in like a higher power or divine source or what have you, think of yourself as part of a community, or as part, we're all part of the same race. We're all doing the same thing here. We're all humans. We all have the same wants and needs. So stop being so fucking self-important and selfish, and just think of yourself as part of something greater than just yourself. I'll get off my soapbox now. That was enough soapboxing. Just don't be an asshole. Stop being a selfish prick. Yeah, I'm talking to you, you fucking prick. Not you, Mateo. You're cool. I'm talking to that other guy who's a selfish prick.
You
fucking prick. You know who you are. And if you're pointing at yourself saying, "Is he talking to me?" Yeah, I probably am talking to you.
And you can change.
Yeah, you can change. It's way easier to be cool than to be a dick. Way easier. Just take the easy route, man. Just be cool to everybody, and don't be a selfish asshole. That's it. I'm done. So anyway, in my mind, Dr. Grinberg, Randolph Cartered the shit out of this place, and he's floating through the cosmos with these chaos entities, learning the nature of reality.
Yeah, that's definitely the coolest explanation, and I'm going to go with that one too.
Yeah, me too. I don't want it to be murder or government conspiracy. I want it to be flying with fucking non-physical gods through the cosmos.
Yeah, he achieved his goal. He found out what he wanted to find out, and
he found the secret, and then the secret took him.
Yep, it's a positive ending.
Yes, good old Dr. Grinberg.
Go Jacabo.
Yes, go Jacabo.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.